Hello everybody and welcome back to another one of those videos where I read the Future of the Fortress posts by Toady1 on the Bay 12 forums for Dwarf Fortress. Of course, this is going to be a very reading heavy post, so if you're not a fan of my reading, which is kind of stumbly at times, I request that you don't complain and simply watch a different video. If you do want to stick around and listen to the way I speak, then we can enjoy a video together. Without further ado, let's dive in. Dwarf Fortress Steam and Itch release date is December 6th this year. We'll also try and get Classic up as soon as we can. With a good November, I should be able to finish it as well. But I have to get the Steam Workshop sorted, and I've never tried anything like it before. Should be fun. Once Classic is up and running, we should have simultaneous releases from that point forward. Moving on to the Bay 12 Games report. Mission status. Thrito says, "We all need release. Release you shall have. On December 6th comes the object of desire all of you have been waiting for. This is the point of the release date we have released at long last. Was it worth it? You'll know in about a month. When you purchase the game, you should have wishlisted on Steam by now. The greater the success, the greater the glory to gaming itself. This will be a moment you will remember as you finally tunnel into the ground and stay there for longer than you probably should. Not long now. Congratulations to the generous." Now we move on to Tarn's Fun with Numbers, and he says, "Thanks everybody that helped out this December 6th this year. This should be an exciting month as we get the last changes together. I'm going to try and get the Steam Workshop together next. This involves connecting the game to the internet, which I've not done before. We'll see how it and I react. If it goes smoothly, I can also make progress on Classic and Arena as well." Now, as you can see, we have the recent revenues. June, of course, was the cry for help when things were kind of getting a little bit rough and they got a large influx of support. And so you don't see the previous months where they were roughly $10,000 monthly. Keep in mind, while these numbers may look like a lot on paper, they are funding two separate people and two separate houses. So this is two full-time incomes and expenses, including healthcare expenses in America. And in a world where this isn't even counting taxes, that's not as much as it may seem. But it's nice to see them at the very least being consistent and slightly above previous months. And with all that aside, we now dive into the Future of the Fortress posts. Of course, if you would like to take part in these forum posts, link to the actual post itself is in the description, and you can go make an account on Bay 12, and when you get accepted, you will be able to leave comments on these posts and ask questions to Tarn himself. First question comes in from the Flame52, and they say, "Why don't hair and nails and a couple of other tissues that grow back in real life have healing rates? They aren't exactly vital organs, but it sucks losing a dwarf to an infected beard wound that won't heal." And Tarn's response is, "Yeah, it's strange. We wanted to grow them out instead of having the wounds heal." The next question comes in from Button, and they ask the classic question of, "How is the new version's multi-threading / multiple CPU core use looking?" And Tarn's response is, "This hasn't changed. People are right that it has always slowly been easier to add it, at least to certain kinds of routines. Maybe it will be time someday, but the Steam version does use the SDL version display thread." The next question comes in from Fikililili, and they say, "Real-life mythologies, although sometimes chaotic, and having varying degrees of consistency depending on the period, have some form of inner logic. There is a reason for this or that god to be there. Or is it that agent of the gods to exist? DF's current handling of the gods is quite ubiquitous at times. Do you plan on actually retooling or entirely reworking the way myths work so to generate some that are more accurate to the way real mythologies are formed and written?" And since Tarn quotes this response from Volleylol, we will read it first, and they say, "I expect the answer from Toady to be simply yes, as it is indeed planned for half of that update. There are some old demos of it, as in showcases of the Myth demo software, and it isn't available to us. And he also talks a bunch about it in the recent DF Talks. Number 24, I think, is the highest concentration. And Tarn's response is, yes, as Volleylol says, that's the main focus of the work on the prototype. And the Myth part of the Myth and Magic release, it should be quite a bit better than it is now. The next question comes in from Black Ion, and they say, would it be possible in the Myth and Magic expansion to create sky worlds? Like worlds where the continents are floating and the oceans are an endless sea of clouds? Or worlds where you have to live on the back of a turtle? Or worlds where it is literally one big giant tree? Getting Xenoblade Chronicles vibes. Tarn quotes this response from Patrick Lundell, so I will read their response, and they say, in principle, the answer is yes. The goal is to allow for these kinds of things. However, the first arc certainly won't implement everything, and may only have small entries into these kinds of things. And it may even wait until the moving equipment arc to actually be implemented to any extent. Floating islands and cloud worlds are definitely things that the map rewrite part is indeed intended to enable, but providing a foundation is not the same as implementing the contents on top of it. And Tarn's response is, Patrick Lundell is correct here. The map rewrite will enable these kinds of things, and floating continents as well as smaller floating castles and islands and such are part of the reason we're doing it. Same goes for turtles and trees, which I think we've mentioned specifically in terms of mining into turtle. But it's another question which will make the first pass content-wise, and we're too far out to be able to address the specifics. The next question comes in from Sheepinator, and they say, are there plans to add more gameplay features for forts with the mountain home status? Example, the ability to direct the overall civilization, declare wars, and expand the civ, etc. Or is there any other endgame type content you have been thinking about? And Tarn's response is, the upcoming army part should see a bit of this. We're having an expanding Baronian Kingdom mode that comes up in various places in the notes. Once you have the monarch, ideally you should be able to set diplomatic and settlement policy for the civ, to the extent that that is official. Next question comes in from Blood Warrior, and they say, I wonder, will the Myth and Magic update have stuff like people who become saints or Shida, and will you be able to become one? And Tarn's response is, there are some references to higher states and such in the existing Myth prototype, with a few throwaway lines about how to attain them and such. And combined with the Prophet and etc. stuff that already exists. I think we'll have some movement here. The next question comes from Techie Tanus, and they say, was diagonal gaps for removing water pressure an intentional feature? And if not, do you feel like you can change it now? And Tarn's response is, I can't think of a specific reason. It's likely faster to only use 4 directions, but I don't think that was a concern. And it's weird since water can flow diagonally. Next, we have another question from Black Ion, and they say, will the appearance and description of any dwarf, human, elf, etc. receive an overhaul as well in preparation for the Myth and Magic update? The thoughts and preferences of any individual goes in depth into any particular dwarf's personality, but doesn't really describes their build or physique other than saying they are weak or strong. Has there been any thoughts in simplifying the personality lore and adding more depth to the physique descriptions? And Tarn's response is, I don't anticipate changes here. I'm not simplifying the personalities, and the examples given for physical changes don't sound like a priority for storytelling. Things like tattoos and such would probably go in before differences in single muscles. The next one comes in from Lou Bloom, and they say, in a similar vein into the recent October 22nd devlog, is it possible to clean up some of the decoration jobs? Right now, there's a twofold issue, the inability to specify exactly what object to decorate, and the inability to avoid repeat decorations. The former means you have to set up a very specific stockpiles to decorate, say, a very specific statue, and the latter means that you can only decorate one thing at a time. If you try to queue up decorating, say, several statues with gemstones, you'll instead just decorate the first one with all the gemstones. The rest of the deadlog made me incredibly excited for the release, and thank you so much for all of your hard work. And Tarn's response is, the encrusting jobs are generalized now, rather than requiring specific types, but I haven't done anything else yet. Obviously much more can be done, but there won't be time before the release. The next question comes in from Immortal D, and they say, are there any plans to revamp or add onto the bug tracker for the Steam release? Or will Steam users also be directed to the catch-all Mantis archive? And Tarn's response is, we're working on this now. I'm not sure if we're going to end up migrating the database or to what, but that's the kind of stuff we're looking at. The next question comes in from Corthalis, and they say, I would like to know more about necromancer experiments. The huge amalgamations mentioned in Legends mode, which seem to rampage like semi-mega beasts, is it possible to meet them in Fortress mode or Adventure mode? Would two of the same species be able to breed? I would like to know if they could even break away from their necromancer and join societies. The last one is true. I had a bunch of traders and a outpost liaison once that were necromancer experiments, and they could fly. It was kind of terrifying. And Tarn's response is, the community knows more than me by now about what's up here. Have they ever been part of a necromancer attack on a fortress? I've seen lots of smaller experiments and all kinds of testing, and the regular humanoid experiments can become playable. But I've never seen that for an amalgamated Hulk ones. I've also never seen them outside of Legends mode, worth noting. Next question comes in from Pilbo, which is a very entertaining name to me, and they say, creatures use the same color descriptions as wood and stone. Will creatures like dogs and cats also vary in color based on these colors, like furniture and dwarves will? Tarn's response is, the furniture uses our new palette system, one 9-color wood palette and one 9-color stone default palette for each in-game color, while dwarf hair and clothing and skin use broader groups since the artists wanted to have more control. I suspect when we get to dogs and cats, it might use the latter system, but I'm not sure. It'd be nice for sure to have the coat patterns and colors accurately reflected, especially if we could get anywhere with the existing but practically unused animal breed structure. Another question from Lou Blum, and they say, similarly to the recent changes in the Jeweler's Workshop, are there plans to also adjust the other rather generic to-do things with thing tasks so that they can be made more functional? For instance, jobs at a farmer's workshop don't let you specify what you want to process. Milling jobs don't let you specify what you want to mill. And cooking jobs don't let you specify what ingredients to use. And you can broadly say what you want to cook or not cook, but you can't say set up a cooking task specifically to cook away all that flour or sugar you keep producing. Also, similar to bin changes, have you also considered making a smaller change to bags and barrels? Farms in particular are notorious for seed barrels, and to a lesser extent, seed bags, having the same effect as bins. And Tarn's response is, there is a lot that can be done, of course, but we haven't added additional job details. And it isn't possible now to do anything super interesting with the release looming. We're going to continue doing friendly things as we go. I don't recall now if we got barrels and bags for free when I did the bins, but I can check. It might be possible to do something there prior to release if it isn't already in. The next question comes in from Florpy Dorp, and they say, when I first played Dwarf Fortress, it was the bin bug that got me close to losing my mind, especially with farm seeds. Didn't end up encountering too many other bugs. The bin one took way too much Googling back then to figure out. So grateful it's been purged. How does it feel to be resolving issues that which you've had in the code for so long? Also, how are you prioritizing which bugs to fix and quality of life stuff to add? Does Kit Fox have a stream of people new to the game getting fresh eyes on it to point out things that frustrate? Or is it mostly experienced dwarfs giving suggestions? Or do you feel you've got a good sense of what has needed fixing for a while and just haven't had the time until now? It seems like a big priority for this release is making sure the thousands, millions of people who are first exposed don't lose their minds with bugs and complexity right off the bat. Are you nervous about that period and response? And Tarn's rather lengthy response is, there's a lot of different kinds of work to do all at once, so it's not easy to prioritize. We have people of various experience levels playing, and sometimes a bug is fixed because of it if it bothers the old people and they remind me. And sometimes a new person trips over it and it has to go. And sometimes it's just something from the tracker. It's certainly helped to have an ongoing discussion feedback, as has happened on and off over the years. Things are surely a little nerve-wracking now, but it feels kind of like default nerves. Like, even if everything were perfect, I feel like I'd probably have about this level of nerves. People aren't complaining terribly, and I've fixed a good portion of the issues raised, and all the really serious ones that have come up, pretty much. But there is a lot left to do. I kind of crossed over a hill, though, when we got zoning back in. Once you could zoom the play area again with all the other stuff together, it started to feel releasable and pretty user-friendly. The next question comes in from Dick Butt DeGrat, and they say, why is Cobalt Ore, Cobaltite, represented in blue ore in the game? Why can't we use it for anything? I'm just curious about this. Were there plans at one point to make blue glass or blue porcelain a thing? I've always forgot when I mine this stuff that I can't turn it into anything other than blue furniture. And why do beetles live in the circus? Well, sorry, no punchline for this one. I just found a couple of these little buddies poking around in the Slade while taking a scroll in adventure mode. And I backpacked a couple of them back to the fortress to make them into a neat little bug exhibit for the dwarves. And I couldn't help but wonder what they were doing down there. Have you ever seen those sheep that live on the Isle of Man? They're called Manx Lohan sheep. I think I butchered that. Tarn's response is, I saw one bluish picture and decided to go for it. This happened with more than one material, since it's dull when everything is gray. Yeah, restrictions aren't strong on vermin, especially when the fowl are digging them up. And I know San Francisco Zoo had some amazing 4-horned critters, possibly even 6-horned, but I don't remember if I saw that one specific one. The next is a 3-parter question from Avalation Brit, but keep in mind, Tarn's responses are very concise, so I'm just going to kind of do it as all together. Part 1. Is there anything planned in the future to allow vampires to produce blood in order to transmit vampirism? Currently, you can fill a goblet with vampire-tainted blood and offer it to an NPC to drink, but this method involves you having to wound and collect your own blood or other vampires. 2. Will title inheritance at some point get an overhaul so each civ can have a different title inheritance rules? Currently, I believe it looks for the offspring with the best social stats, and failing that, I believe the title goes out randomly. So perhaps the Dwarven civilization establishes an absolute conatic primogeniture, whilst another decides on ultimogeniture. Additionally, would this, if implemented, could change depending on the dwarf? Part 3. Will religions be unrestricted in adventure mode? As currently, you have to be of that race, of that civilization, in order to choose one of their religions. So if I was a bark scorpion man coming from a dwarven civilization, I cannot choose to worship any gods, even of the civilization I'm a part of. To further this, apart from assuming identity, will you consider enabling the ability in adventure mode to find faith or pray to a god. It could make for an interesting story if an adventurer found faith on their journey, or perhaps began to worship a new god. And Tarn's rapid-fire response is, in regards to vampires, nothing specific is planned, but offering the vampire curse is part of the villain's stuff, and it might need support. 2, that kind of thing's on the table for the entity rewrite after the magic stuff, in regards to factions. And then lastly, that's odd. People can cross between race gods in World Gen as far as I remember, but yeah, there's no mechanism for it in adventure mode specifically. There should be. That means hopefully it will be added. Next is kind of a fun one about Halloween, and the first question comes in from Pilbo, and they say, what were you for Halloween? Or what would you like to be if you had taken the time to put together a costume? And also, similar question from a curious cat, have the two of you ever considered dressing up as a toad and sloth for Halloween? And Tarn's response was, nothing this year, not even Jojo, even though she has many outfits. Jojo is Zach's dog and she's adorable. Things have been hectic and weird, and it would be fun for Zach to dress up as a giant guinea pig, though he is 3-toe for his pet guinea pig. They have 4 in the front and 3 in the back. The next question comes in from Lord Lemon Pie, and they say, will succession forts and trading save games be possible in the initial Steam release, or will it take some time for that to be possible? And Tarn's response is, yeah, even though we added new timelines, etc., the file structure itself is basically no change here. In Steam, you can open up your local files and add and remove stuff from the save folder like before. The next question comes in from Mr. Crabman. It's a quick 3-parter, but it's all the same subject, and says, assuming it's finalized now, how many music tracks are there? 2, where are the classic tracks going now, since apparently there is new menu music and Legends mode also has custom music for it? 3, it has been asked before, but is there news on what's happening to the intro movie? And Tarn's response is 15 tracks, mostly 4 minutes, a 2, several 5+, 1 is nearly 7 minutes, and the 16 interludes that clock more like 1 minute each, but it's almost 3. But 1 is almost 3. And the 7-minute track is a reimagining of the title and main track by Simon and Dabu, and the intro movie is living on in the old versions for now. And that brings us to the end of this month's Future of the Fortress. Once again, the release date is coming real damn soon. And I think it's worth noting that if you haven't actually looked at the thread yourself, I recommend looking at the thread. There is actually a question about modding in there that I skipped purely due to the fact that I don't know how to read code. None of it really meant anything to me. So if you're interested in modding, check out the thread for this month's Future of the Fortress. Lastly, I just want to say I just had my best day/month ever on YouTube, and I just wanted to say a huge thank you to everybody who watched that announcement video with the trailer at the beginning. Big shout-outs to everybody who watched it. I'm blown away by the amount of support and response that video has gained. And I just want to say the future is bright, and thank you very much for watching these videos. And I hope to see you all in the next one.